It's changing the course of an organization, and in many cases a large organization, to a new direction. And often the underlying reason is due to external circumstances that are beyond control of a large organization. I've been with NASA, boy, it's been a long time, 37 years, and I will tell you that the one constant throughout my entire career at NASA, while I've been at NASA, is change, which was unusual and very unexpected, because when I came to NASA, when I was new, and all I knew was the tremendous success we'd had in Mercury and Gemini and Apollo and Skylab. You know, when you're watching from afar, it looks so easy and it looks like it's predestined. But once you get here, you learn that none of our major programs are easy, and none of them happen overnight. And since I've been here, every one of the programs I've worked on, Space Station, the shuttle before Space Station, and most recently Orion, and now our exploration programs, all have had to deal with significant changes throughout their development and operational life cycle. You know, probably the most poignant change throughout my career was the changes we had to endure while I was in the Orion program, either as the deputy manager or the program manager. And just like everything else, over the course of Orion, the only constant was change. And we went, our very first mission was to close the gap in between the end of the shuttle flying and the first Orion flight to Space Station. That was our first mission. And we weren't at that for a year when our mission was changed to become the preeminent human exploration vehicle of the generation. And then, by the way, in 2010, we were proposed to be canceled. And then we came back. We were going to be a crew rescue vehicle. We were going to go get an asteroid. We were going to build a gateway. And now, you know, the good thing is every one of these is exciting. Now we're going to be a really key element of the goal to put people back on the moon by 2024. So we've had to deal with a lot of change. And I'll take, for example, the most recent change. For a long time, we had the team focused on Orion being instrumental to building the gateway. And that drove a certain set of requirements. It drove a certain schedule. And then March 2019, all of us watched on the TV as the vice president told us, and we're going to land the first woman and the next man on the surface of the moon in 5 years. And I said, wow, that sounds like change. And sure enough, it was. We had to shift the team's focus, because it wasn't immediately about building the gateway, although that's still a really important part of our mission. It was about how do we as Orion support the nation's new mission. And you find when you go through this, there's certain things you have to do, and one of the things is getting the team behind the change. First thing you have to recognize is often when things change, many times, as I mentioned, it's due to external circumstances. And oftentimes these external circumstances are driving a direction that many on the team won't appreciate. They will have their heart set on going to the first destination, and now we have to take a hard left turn. So when you're dealing with things, there's several really important steps, especially in a large organization, because in a large organization, for example, Orion is 5,000 people geographically distributed around the world, literally, and they're all picking up the newspaper and reading things and interpreting them. So the key thing is communications, and then there's what's communication. And I found several things very important associated with the communications. The first is you have to explain the reason for the need to change. And it could be, well, we were proposed to be canceled because of these reasons. And therefore, I think the best way to deal with this is this. Or in the most recent case, it's actually a positive change. The nation defined a very new aggressive goal. So the first thing is explain to people, here's why we need to change. And then again is to solicit, don't just say, well, we're going to change. And pretend like you're driving your car and the change is to move to the next lane, because it's not that easy. It's not that mechanical. What you need to do is you need to solicit the inputs. What does this mean to us? What does it mean to the people and their careers and the work that they're doing? Because often careers are affected. The things people have been dreaming on earning their livelihood with are affected. So you get input from the team back, and then you use the goal, the new destination, and the input from the team to chart the new course. And you do that together with the team, and you do that with the other team. And in the numerous changes that I've been involved with, as a leader, that technique has proved successful in navigating change. Since the day I've arrived, I've always been really lucky that I've had incredible managers, incredible leaders at NASA. And when there was somebody that I admired, I watched them. I watched what they did, how they did it. So, and again, before I was the program manager, I was observing change and change management before I really even knew that, hey, we're doing change management. But I saw it. In hindsight, I can go back and I see, now I understand why Tommy Holloway told me that when I was a, GS11 trying to be a GS12. But probably the single most visible event, and really you talk about change, there's not much bigger change, at least in a work environment, was what happened to Orion in 2010 when the administration proposed canceling Orion. And I remember that we did not know anything about it, but we got an email over the weekend. Hey, tune into the administrator's budget briefing on Monday morning. So we did. We went into my boss's office and we turned on the television, the NASA TV, and then we sat there in shock as we learned we were proposed to be canceled. And first of all, there is, like I said, there's probably not a bigger change, because what we were doing at the time, creating a human exploration spacecraft, there were many people on the team. It was more than just a job. It was their life's goal. People grew up dreaming of working at NASA, and they were able to be implementing their life's ambition. So it was really hard. And the way I learned is, great leaders. I was a student of, first of all, our center director, Mike Coates at the time, and Mark Geyer, who was the program manager. I was a deputy at the time. And boy, did I learn a lot from those guys. And again, it was from those folks that I learned some of the steps I talked to you about. Get out, talk to the people. You can imagine 5,000 people across the country picking up the newspaper saying you're canceled. So we had quite a communications problem. And by the way, we spent the first, talk about communicating, we spent, in that case, it was so big, so important, that we spent the first 3 months on an airplane visiting the centers, the other NASA centers, visiting our major contractors, and telling everybody what we knew. First of all, you have to be truthful, right? Because they're going to pick up the papers, and we couldn't pretend that the president did not try to cancel us. We had to be honest about what was going on, as well as the fact that it was just a proposal, and ultimately it was Congress that would have the appropriations authority and did determine our future, by the way. But I was lucky, again, to your basic question, I was lucky. I had good people to mentor me and teach me along the ways, and Mark Geyer and Mike Coates were really great in that circumstance. Yeah, two things come to mind. And we've talked about one, but The first thing I tell everybody, even high school students and college students who I talk to now who want to come work in human space, and they ask me what should they do. And the first thing, and I think this advice is applicable to everybody, by the way, including myself, because I just recently did a job change. The first thing I tell people is, follow your interests, follow your heart. And I've done that my entire life, and I've gotten to do some amazing things. And my career has worked out for me very, very well. And I'll look back at the things I've been able to do. But a lot of times, sometimes people have goals. I want to be rich. I want to make money, which, by the way, are fine. But if that's the case, then focus on that. If your focus is to become a program manager, well, it might not be about getting the GS-15 promotion the first. It's follow your heart, follow your passion. And when you do that, what I found, at least it worked well for me, is number one, you're happy with your work. When you're happy with your work, you tend to work hard. And when you work hard and when you're happy, things tend to work out for yourselves. It might not always be on the timeline you had hoped. And by the way, my timeline didn't work out for me quite a few times. I tell the story, I was a flight director, but it took me 3 times to apply to finally be selected. I was not selected the first 2 times. But again, I followed my dreams. I never gave up. I didn't change my career path because I had adversity or wasn't successful. I stuck with it. And you often hear 2 people advise you, it's not how you react when you're successful, but how you react when you have adversity. So follow your interests, follow what's in your heart, especially in times of adversity. And secondly, look for opportunities not only in formal training, but in informal training. There's people, when you look around, that because of the way they do their job or how they lead, that you'll be inspired by. And seek those people out, both formally and informally. Sometimes just listen to them and try and learn, because there's great leaders at NASA today that can offer everybody things to learn about.